My beloved child, I know how deeply you have longed for certain things in your life to return to the way they once were. You have waited, prayed, endured, reconsidered, and told yourself that perhaps one more season of patience would restore what has been fading. You have carried questions into quiet mornings and restless nights, wondering whether you should keep believing, keep waiting, or keep giving what remains of your strength. Part of you has hoped that if you remained faithful long enough, the door before you would eventually open again, exactly as you remembered it. But today, I need you to hear a difficult truth with a steady heart. There are doors that will not open again in the way you hoped, and there are seasons I will not ask you to preserve simply because they were once meaningful to you. This is not punishment. It is not evidence that your prayers were ignored, nor does it mean that I have abandoned the desires you carried so sincerely. Sometimes, the answer to a prayer for freedom begins with the ending of what has kept you bound. You have asked me to bring you out of cycles that exhausted you, but when I began loosening what held you there, fear caused you to reach back toward what was familiar. You wanted freedom without departure, renewal without surrender, and a new beginning that would allow every old attachment, pattern, expectation, and way of thinking to cross the threshold with you. Yet not everything can enter the next season. Some things belong to the life you are leaving, and accepting that truth is one of the hardest forms of faith because it requires you to trust me before you can see what will replace what has ended. I know why this frightens you. Familiar pain can sometimes feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. When you have lived with something long enough, even its instability can begin to feel normal. You learn where the floor creaks. You learn which walls are weak. You learn where to place the buckets when the roof leaks. You learn how to move carefully through a house whose foundation is cracking, and eventually, survival becomes so familiar that you stop asking whether you were ever meant to live that way. You repaint the walls, repair what you can reach, and convince yourself that because the structure is still standing, it must still be safe. But I have seen the foundation beneath what you can see. I have watched what has been quietly deteriorating. I know what repeated disappointment has cost you, how much strength you have spent maintaining appearances, and how often you have tried to preserve something because admitting its condition felt more painful than continuing to repair it. There comes a point when another repair is not mercy. There comes a point when reinforcing what is collapsing only delays the freedom that truth is trying to bring. I will not continue strengthening a structure that depends on fear, denial, silence, or the constant sacrifice of what is true. I love you too deeply to make a cage more comfortable simply because you have learned how to live inside it. Deliverance does not always look like the restoration of what existed before. Sometimes, deliverance is the courage to recognize that what once sheltered you can no longer carry the weight of your future. This is why you must begin naming things accurately. For too long you may have called delay patience simply because waiting felt more spiritual than admitting that nothing was changing. You may have called dependence loyalty because separation frightened you. You may have called endless endurance love because you believed leaving anything unfinished would mean you had failed. You may have called fear wisdom because uncertainty seemed more dangerous than remaining where you were. But when something is given the wrong name, you will protect it for the wrong reasons. You will continue defending what is draining you because you believe you are defending faithfulness. You will keep asking for more time when time has already revealed what you refused to see. You will stand before a door that has stopped opening and interpret your continued knocking as perseverance, even though the silence has become part of the answer. I am not asking you to become cynical, impatient, or careless. I am asking you to become truthful. Truth does not erase the good that once existed. It does not require you to pretend that every memory was false or every hope was foolish. Something may have contained beauty and still have reached its end. A season may have mattered deeply and still no longer belong to your present. A door may once have been right for you and still no longer be the entrance through which your life is meant to continue. The end of something does not automatically mean that everything within it was meaningless. It means only that its purpose cannot be measured by how long you manage to keep it alive. You have often asked me for a clear sign, expecting clarity to arrive dramatically, perhaps through an unmistakable event that would remove every doubt. But clarity does not always come with thunder. Sometimes it arrives through the repeated absence of peace. Sometimes it comes through a pattern that keeps revealing the same truth despite every new explanation you give it. Sometimes it comes through something that works only when you force it, something that requires constant effort merely to remain standing, or something that repeatedly brings you back to the same questions without producing different fruit. You may call this confusion because admitting recognition feels final, but there are moments when the heart is not confused. It is simply resisting what it already knows. You have seen more than you think you have. You have noticed what continually disturbs your peace. You have recognized what repeatedly promises change but returns to the same condition. You have watched the same truth emerge even after you tried to cover it with optimism. What you need now may not be another sign. It may be permission to trust what has already been revealed. I understand why that permission is difficult to give yourself. You do not want to mistake temporary hardship for a permanent ending. You do not want to walk away from something that might have been restored if you had only waited longer. Those fears are real, and I do not condemn you for having them. But waiting is not neutral. Remaining still is also a choice, and delay can become its own road. There are times when what feels like caution is simply extending the life of something that has already shown you what it is. The difficult news then is not that everything is being taken from you. The difficult news is that I am asking you to stop calling what has ended unfinished, simply because your heart has not yet caught up with the truth. A season has reached its boundary. A foundation has revealed its weakness. A door has ceased to be the place where your future waits. You do not have to understand everything that comes next today. You do not need to know what will stand where the old structure once stood. For now, your task is smaller and more difficult. Acknowledge what is true without trying to immediately change its meaning. Allow the closed door to be closed. Allow the ending to be an ending. Allow yourself to stop interpreting every loss as abandonment. What feels like removal may be protection. What feels like interruption may be the beginning of rescue. What feels like the death of one future may be the moment you finally become able to see that your life was never limited to that single door. Now that you have begun to recognize that some doors are no longer meant to define your future, I want you to understand something equally important. Your worth was never placed in the hands of another person, another opportunity, another institution, or another response. You may have lived as though your value rose and fell according to whether someone chose you, understood you, approved of you, stayed with you, answered you, or made room for you. You may have allowed silence to become a verdict, rejection to become a sentence, and another person's changing mood to determine whether you felt secure in your own life. But I did not create you to live outside yourself, waiting for someone else to hand you permission to enter. I may work through people, relationships, places, and opportunities, but none of them has the authority to decide whether your life still has meaning. Before anyone welcomed you, you belonged to me. Before anyone praised you, you had value. Before any door opened, purpose was already present within you. This is why I am calling you back into stewardship over your own life. Stewardship does not mean controlling every outcome or forcing people to respond the way you want. It means refusing to give authority to what was never designed to carry it. It means understanding that someone can disappoint you without defining you, misunderstand you without erasing you, and leave without taking your future with them. For too long, you have carried responsibilities that did not belong entirely to you. You believed that if you explained yourself more clearly, spoke more gently, waited for the perfect moment, or found better words, you could make another person finally understand. You thought that if you were patient enough, they would change. If you were kind enough, they would become safe. If you sacrificed enough, they would recognize your heart. But there are limits to what love can accomplish when only one person is willing to face the truth. You can open the door to an honest conversation, but you cannot force another person to walk through it. You can apologize for your own mistakes, but you cannot take responsibility for theirs. You can speak truth with compassion, but you cannot make someone love the truth simply because you delivered it gently. You can offer forgiveness, but forgiveness does not require you to continually return to the same pattern and call repeated harm another opportunity. There is a difference between mercy and self-abandonment. There is a difference between patience and allowing yourself to disappear. I have watched you slowly adjust yourself in order to keep peace around you. You changed your tone before speaking. You studied another person's face before deciding whether it was safe to express what you felt. You rearranged your plans, reduced your needs, softened your boundaries, delayed difficult conversations, and sometimes abandoned your own desires because you feared what might happen if someone became disappointed. At first you called it flexibility, then you called it maturity, then you called it love. But over time, adaptation became disappearance. You became so skilled at protecting everyone else from discomfort that you no longer knew how to protect the truth within yourself. You were not created to disappear inside your own life. I did not give you a voice so that you would spend your years swallowing everything that needed to be spoken. I did not place conscience within you so that you could silence it whenever someone else became uncomfortable. I did not give you the capacity to love so that love could become the reason you continually betray what you know is right. Kindness does not require you to become available for misuse. Humility does not require you to erase yourself. Gentleness does not mean surrendering every boundary. A boundary is not an act of hatred. It is not automatically punishment, rejection, revenge, or hardness of heart. Sometimes, a boundary is simply the truthful line that protects what must remain healthy. You can love someone and still say no. You can care deeply and still create distance. You can forgive and still refuse to return to the same environment. You can remember what was beautiful without pretending that what exists now is still safe. You do not need to turn another person into a villain in order to admit that something is no longer good for you. You do not need anger in order to leave a room where your dignity is continually diminished. Some doors are closed quietly. Some distances are created peacefully. Some goodbyes are not declarations of hatred, but acknowledgments that love cannot continue to mean losing yourself. When you begin establishing healthier limits, not everyone will understand. People who became comfortable with your unconditional yes may call you selfish when you begin saying no. Those who benefited from your constant availability may accuse you of changing when you stop carrying what belongs to them. Those who are accustomed to endless explanations may call you cold when you stop defending every decision. Those who expected you to rescue them may say that you have abandoned them when you finally allow them to carry their own responsibility. Do not measure the wisdom of a boundary only by another person's immediate reaction to it. Their discomfort does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. Sometimes, discomfort simply reveals that an old arrangement no longer benefits them in the way it once did. I am not teaching you to become hard. I am teaching you to become clear. I am not asking you to distrust everyone. I am asking you to stop ignoring repeated evidence because you are afraid of disappointing someone. I am not asking you to close your heart. I am asking you to understand that an open heart does not require an unguarded life. You can remain compassionate without becoming responsible for everyone's emotions. You can be generous without giving away the authority to decide what happens within your own life. You can listen without surrendering your judgment. You can serve without becoming the source from which everyone else expects endless strength. Reclaiming your life begins in these quiet decisions. It begins when you stop asking another person's mood whether you are allowed to have peace. It begins when you stop treating rejection as proof that something is wrong with your entire being. It begins when you recognize that your voice matters even when it trembles, that your needs do not become illegitimate simply because someone dislikes hearing them, and that your conscience is not an inconvenience to be silenced for the sake of keeping everyone comfortable. You are allowed to stand upright within your own life. You are allowed to tell the truth without apologizing for the fact that truth changes things. You are allowed to care without carrying what was never yours. You are allowed to love without disappearing. And as you begin doing this, you are not becoming someone new in the sense of becoming harder, colder, or less compassionate. You are returning to the person you were meant to be before fear taught you that acceptance had to be purchased through self-erasure. This is the beginning of reclaiming your life, not forcing others to change, not controlling every outcome, and not proving your strength, but refusing to surrender your God-given worth, voice, and responsibility for your own life to anyone who was never meant to possess them. There is something you are still carrying that deserves your full attention now. The door may have closed, the room may have grown quiet, and the season may already be behind you, yet your hand is still wrapped around an old key. You know it no longer opens what it once opened, but you have not wanted to put it down because there was a time when that key represented hope. It represented promises you believed, conversations you treasured, and moments that seemed to confirm a future you had already begun building in your heart. It reminds you of what was beautiful before everything became complicated. It reminds you of the version of the story in which things eventually worked out, people finally understood, apologies came, wounds were repaired, and all the waiting proved worthwhile. I understand why you have held it so tightly. You are not holding it because you are weak. You are holding it because letting it go feels like admitting that something you loved will not become what you hoped it would become. But what once gave you the strength to endure is now keeping your attention fixed on a door that no longer leads forward. Every time you touch that old key, you are tempted to ask the same questions again. What if one more conversation changes everything? What if they finally realize what they lost? What if the situation is different now? What if you misunderstood the ending? What if enough time has passed for the door to open again? These questions often arrive when you are tired, lonely, disappointed, or uncertain about what comes next. They rarely announce themselves as a decision to return to the past. Instead, they appear as small impulses that seem harmless. You reread old words. You check a place you promised yourself you would stop checking. You look at a name you know will disturb your peace. You revisit memories and begin editing them until the difficult parts disappear. You imagine what the story might have become if one conversation had gone differently, if you had said the right thing, if they had stayed, if you had waited longer, or if you had tried harder. Then slowly, without realizing it, you find yourself standing emotionally in front of the same door again, asking the past to provide an answer it has never been able to give you. This is why releasing the old key is not the same as pretending nothing mattered. I am not asking you to erase what happened. I am not asking you to call every memory false or every moment meaningless. I am not asking you to hate anyone in order to move forward. There were things you genuinely loved. There were hopes you held sincerely. There may have been seasons of laughter, connection, purpose, or belonging that were real. You do not have to destroy those memories in order to accept that they no longer have authority over your future. Something can have been meaningful and still be finished. You can be grateful for what was once good without returning to what later became harmful. You can acknowledge the beauty of a chapter without demanding that it become the entire book. The difficulty is that you have often believed closure must come from the same place where the wound began. You have waited for an apology, an explanation, an admission, a final conversation, or some clear acknowledgement that proves you were not imagining what happened. You have hoped that one day the person who hurt you would name the harm correctly, understand what it cost you, and finally give you the peace you have been waiting for. But closure is not always delivered by the one who caused the pain. Some people will never explain themselves honestly. Some will never recognize the weight of what they did. Some may tell a version of the story that protects them and leaves you misunderstood. Some may continue with their lives while you are still trying to make sense of what happened. Their refusal to acknowledge the truth does not erase your experience. Their silence does not make your pain imaginary. Their lack of remorse does not mean you must remain emotionally tied to them until they become the person you needed them to be. Sometimes, closure comes as a decision placed into your own hands. The decision that you will no longer require another person's understanding before believing what you lived through. the decision that you will no longer wait for an apology before allowing yourself to have peace, the decision that the old door may still exist somewhere behind you but will no longer possess the power to call you back whenever it makes a sound. Freedom begins when memory remains, but obedience to memory ends. You may still remember, you may still grieve, you may still feel tenderness when certain moments return to you. None of that means you have failed to move forward. Freedom does not require emotional numbness. It means you can remember without reopening the door. You can feel sadness without turning sadness into a command to return. You can miss what was good without denying what was broken. You can grieve the future you once imagined without rebuilding the structure that could no longer support it. There will be moments when the emptiness feels uncomfortable because so much of your identity became organized around waiting. You learned how to check, anticipate, explain, repair, endure, and remain ready. You became a guard standing in a hallway, always listening for the sound of the door. When you finally stop guarding it, the silence may feel strange. You may ask yourself, if I am no longer waiting for this person, this answer, this opportunity, this apology, or this outcome, then who am I? Do not be afraid of that question. The emptiness that follows release is not proof that you made the wrong decision. It is space. It is the room that becomes visible when what consumed your attention is no longer occupying it. At first, that room may echo. Emotions you postponed may finally rise because there is no longer constant chaos distracting you from them. Let yourself feel them without using them as a reason to go backward. Let grief be grief. Let tears be tears. Let disappointment have a voice without giving it the authority to rebuild what has already fallen. You are not abandoning your past by releasing the key. You are placing the past where it belongs. You are allowing what happened to become part of your story without allowing it to remain the author of everything that comes next. The old key may once have represented hope, but your future cannot be built around the possibility that yesterday will change its mind. Open your hand. You do not need to throw away the memories. You only need to stop treating them as instructions. You do not need to deny what mattered. You only need to accept that meaning does not require continuation. And you do not need the old door to reopen in order for your life to become whole again. The moment you stop waiting for the past to grant you permission to live is the moment the key begins to lose its power. After you begin releasing what belongs to the past, another challenge quietly appears. Learning how to recognize what is safe without allowing old wounds to decide everything for you. You have spent so much time protecting yourself from disappointment, instability, rejection, manipulation, and emotional confusion that protection may now feel more natural than receiving. Your heart learned to stay alert because there were seasons when alertness helped you survive. You learned to study faces, measure tones of voice, notice small changes, anticipate reactions, and prepare yourself before anything had even happened. You learned to expect that peace might suddenly become conflict, kindness might eventually carry a hidden cost, and closeness might later become a place of pain. Those instincts were formed for a reason, and I do not ask you to despise the part of yourself that became watchful. It was trying to keep you from being wounded again. But what once protected you can become another kind of prison if it begins treating every new person, opportunity, and peaceful moment as though it were simply the past wearing a different face. You must learn that discernment and fear are not the same thing. Discernment observes carefully, but fear often reaches a conclusion before the present has had time to reveal itself. Discernment asks questions. Fear assumes it already knows the answer. Discernment watches consistency over time. Fear desperately searches for the first detail that resembles an old wound, and then declares that the entire story will end the same way. Discernment allows truth to become clear. Fear demands immediate certainty, because uncertainty feels dangerous. This is why I want you to stop condemning the present for crimes committed by the past. A new person must be evaluated by their own fruit, not by the failures of someone who came before them. A new opportunity must be considered according to what it actually asks of you, not according to what an old disappointment taught you to expect. A peaceful season should not automatically be treated as the quiet before disaster. You are allowed to let what is new prove itself through its own consistency. This does not mean becoming careless. I am not asking you to open every door, trust every promise, or ignore what experience has taught you. Healthy discernment remains awake. It pays attention to whether words and actions agree. It notices whether your boundaries are respected without punishment. It observes whether someone can hear the word no without making you afraid to say it again. It asks whether an opportunity requires you to betray your values in order to keep it. It notices whether a relationship creates increasing clarity or whether everything becomes more confusing the longer you remain inside it. It watches whether you are free to be honest or whether you slowly begin performing a version of yourself in order to be accepted. These are not questions of panic. They are questions of fruit. What is genuine does not need to force you through fear. It does not have to rush you into decisions before you have time to observe. It can withstand questions. It can respect healthy slowness. It does not punish you for needing clarity. One of the most important things you must now learn is the difference between intuition and an activated memory. They can feel similar because both may alert you that something deserves attention, but they do not always speak in the same way. Intuition often carries a kind of clarity, even when the message is uncomfortable. It makes you attentive without scattering your mind in every direction. It draws you toward what is true. An activated memory often creates urgency before there is enough present evidence to justify it. It may tell you to check immediately, run immediately, shut down immediately, confront immediately, or assume immediately. It fills your mind with possibilities until you can no longer separate what is happening now from what happened before. When that alarm begins sounding, do not despise yourself, but do not obey it automatically either. Give the present enough room to reveal itself. Ask what is actually happening rather than what you fear might happen. Remind yourself that remembering an old danger does not automatically mean you are standing in the same danger again. Then return to the fruit. Is there consistency? Is there respect? Is there honesty? Is there space for your voice? Is there patience with your questions? Does peace grow stronger as reality becomes clearer? Or do you find yourself gradually abandoning yourself again? This kind of discernment takes time, but time is not your enemy. You once became accustomed to intense beginnings, urgent promises, emotional extremes, and situations that demanded immediate investment. Because of that, what is healthy may initially feel strangely quiet. Someone who respects your refusal may confuse you because you are waiting for resentment. A conversation that remains calm may feel unfamiliar because you expect the moment when it will become a battle. An opportunity that opens without requiring you to exhaust yourself may make you suspicious because you have believed for so long that everything valuable must be purchased through struggle. Someone may help you, and your first instinct may be to calculate what they will eventually demand in return. Someone may show patience, and you may wonder what motive is hidden beneath it. Grace can feel uncomfortable when exhaustion has been your measure of worth. But not every gift is a trap. Not every peaceful room is hiding an alarm. Not every person who approaches your heart intends to take something from it. There are relationships in which kindness does not need to be earned through self-sacrifice. There are places where you can speak at a normal volume and still be heard. There are opportunities that do not require you to prove your worth every day in order to remain. There are people who can build beside you rather than continually drawing from you. You must allow yourself to discover these things without demanding that they resemble the struggles you already understand. At first, safety may feel less exciting than chaos because your body has learned to associate intensity with significance. You may mistake steadiness for emptiness simply because nothing is pulling you into survival mode. But peace has its own depth. Consistency has its own strength. Healthy love does not have to keep you constantly guessing in order to feel meaningful. I am teaching you to become comfortable with what does not wound you. I am teaching you to let a peaceful day remain peaceful instead of spending it waiting for the moment it will collapse. I am teaching you to receive a kind word without immediately asking what it will cost. I am teaching you that being cautious does not require being closed, and being open does not require being naive. The goal is not to become someone who never feels afraid again. The goal is to become someone who can feel fear without allowing fear to write every verdict. Let the present speak for itself. Let consistency matter more than intensity. Let actions carry more weight than promises. Let time reveal what urgency tries to hide. You have learned how to detect danger. Now you must also learn how to recognize goodness when it arrives quietly. What happened before may sharpen your discernment, but it does not have to steal your ability to receive. You are not required to carry the alarm system of the old house into every new room. You can remain wise without remaining afraid. You can protect your heart without sealing it shut. And as you learn this, you will discover that true discernment does not keep you imprisoned in suspicion. It gives you the clarity to know when to step away, and just as importantly, when it is finally safe to stay. My beloved child, as you learn to recognize what is healthy, without allowing fear to make every decision for you, there is another foundation that must now be strengthened, and this one is not outside you. It is within you. For a long time, you may have believed that safety depended primarily on whether other people treated you well, understood you correctly, kept their promises, or remained emotionally stable. Those things matter. But there is a deeper kind of safety I want to build within you. The confidence that you will no longer abandon yourself when someone else becomes disappointed, distant, angry, or unwilling to understand. You must become a safe place for your own heart. This does not mean becoming isolated, self-sufficient, or unwilling to receive love. It means learning that you can remain connected to others without losing your connection to what you know is true. For too long, you may have made promises to yourself and broken them the moment someone reacted negatively. You told yourself you would stop explaining, but when you were misunderstood, you wrote another long message. You decided you would maintain a boundary, but when someone accused you of being selfish, you erased it. You knew you needed rest, but when someone needed something from you, you ignored your exhaustion and proved your usefulness once again. You recognized that a conversation was becoming unhealthy, but you stayed because leaving felt rude, disloyal, or cruel. Each time you did this, you taught yourself that another person's discomfort was more important than your own truth. Now I am teaching you something different. Every small promise you keep to yourself becomes another stone in a stronger foundation. When you say, "I will not continue this conversation while respect is disappearing," and you truly stop, something within you becomes more stable. When you decide to rest because your body is tired instead of forcing yourself to perform for approval, another part of you learns that your needs will not always be ignored. When you speak honestly with someone trustworthy instead of hiding everything to protect another person's image, you remind your own heart that truth is allowed to exist. You do not need to guarantee that no one will ever hurt you again. That is impossible. You do not control every person who enters your life. But you can stop repeatedly abandoning the wisdom you have already been given. You can stop calling recurring patterns rare accidents. You can stop giving unlimited access to people who have not shown that they know how to handle your heart responsibly. You can stop using compassion as an excuse to tolerate what consistently destroys your peace. Part of becoming safe for yourself also means releasing the exhausting need to be understood by everyone. You have spent too much strength trying to correct every story told about you. You have explained your motives to people who had already decided what they wanted to believe. You have rewritten your words, changed your tone, and returned to conversations simply because you could not bear the thought that someone might misunderstand you. You have lived like your own attorney in a courtroom that never closes, constantly presenting evidence, defending your intentions, and hoping that one perfect explanation will finally produce a fair verdict. But you do not have to win every version of the story. Some people will misunderstand you because they do not have all the information. Others will misunderstand you because understanding would require them to examine their own behavior. You cannot build your life around correcting every interpretation. There comes a point when peace requires you to stop arguing with a verdict that was never yours to control. Let your character become clearer through consistency rather than endless explanation. Let your life speak over time. You do not need to chase every accusation into every room where it is repeated. You need the strength to remain truthful even when someone else chooses a different story. This is also the season in which I am removing identities you have worn for so long that you began mistaking them for who you are. Perhaps you became the person who always saves everyone. When there was a problem, you solved it. When someone was hurting, you carried them. When responsibilities were abandoned, you picked them up. You became so accustomed to being needed that usefulness began to feel like proof of value. Perhaps you became the person who never asks for help because you learned that needing others could lead to disappointment. Perhaps you became the one who always endures, the one who can handle more, wait longer, forgive again, and remain strong regardless of the cost. Perhaps you became the person who must never disappoint anyone because someone else's displeasure makes you feel as though you have failed morally. These roles may once have helped you survive or given you a sense of purpose. But a role is not an identity. You are more than what you do for everyone else. You are not valuable only when solving problems. You are not lovable only when convenient. You are not faithful only when exhausted. You are not kind only when saying yes. I want you to discover an identity deeper than usefulness. You can love without losing yourself. You can serve without becoming responsible for everyone's life. You can need other people without handing them ownership of your choices. You can rest without becoming lazy. You can move slowly without calling yourself left behind. You can reconsider a decision when new truth becomes available without calling that change a failure. You are allowed to grow beyond the version of yourself that others became comfortable with. At first, this may feel unfamiliar because you have spent years measuring yourself by what you provided. When you stop rescuing, there may be silence. When you stop over-explaining, there may be discomfort. When you stop immediately responding to every demand, you may wonder whether you are becoming selfish. But silence does not mean you have lost your value. Discomfort does not mean you have lost your goodness. You are learning to distinguish love from overfunctioning, compassion from self-neglect, generosity from fear-driven giving, and responsibility from control. This is what it means to rebuild the house within you. A healthy house is not one with no doors, where everyone can enter whenever they choose. Neither is it a house with every entrance locked and every window sealed because you are afraid of being hurt. A house without boundaries becomes unprotected, but a house built only for defense becomes a prison. I am teaching you both movements: how to protect and how to receive, how to say no without hatred and yes without fear, how to close what should not enter and remain open to what brings life. You will not. But each time you remain present with yourself instead of disappearing, each time you honor what you know without becoming harsh, and each time you allow your worth to exist apart from usefulness, you strengthen the foundation. The deepest change of this season is not merely that certain people or circumstances no longer control you. It is that you are becoming someone who no longer hands yourself away in order to be accepted. You are learning to stand within your own life with an open heart, a clear voice, and a steadier sense of who you are. And from that stronger foundation, your future choices will no longer have to be made by fear, guilt, exhaustion, or the desperate need to prove that you deserve to remain. You have reached the place where understanding must become movement. You have recognized what could no longer continue, begun reclaiming your worth, loosened your grip on the past, learned to distinguish discernment from fear, and started rebuilding a stronger foundation within yourself. Now, the final step is not to gather more explanations. It is to live according to what has already been made clear. You do not need to transform your entire life in one dramatic moment. You do not need to solve every question tonight, predict every challenge ahead, or know exactly where the road will lead. I am asking you to begin with something smaller, something concrete enough for your heart and body to recognize that a new decision is becoming real. Put down one specific key and then open one window toward life. Putting down one key means choosing one practical way to stop feeding what you already know belongs behind you. It may mean removing access to something you continually check, even though it disturbs your peace. It may mean putting away an object that pulls you back into a season you are trying to leave. It may mean refusing to reopen a conversation that repeatedly returns you to confusion, stopping yourself from searching for information that keeps an old attachment alive, or writing down the one thing you know you must stop waiting for. Do not try to do 10 things at once. You do not need a dramatic purge to prove that you are serious. Choose one action clear enough to tell your life, I am no longer standing guard at that door. Let that action become the first visible expression of the decision you have already begun making within. Then open one window. Do one thing that moves you toward life rather than merely away from pain. Call someone you trust. Step outside and allow the light to touch your face. Prepare something nourishing for yourself. Finish one task you have neglected because so much emotional energy was tied to the past. Rearrange a corner of your room so that the space around you begins reflecting the change within you. Sit quietly with me for a few minutes without asking yesterday to become different. Receive help when it is offered. Let yourself rest. Let yourself participate in something simple and good without demanding that it solve everything. Put one thing down and receive one thing. Release and receive, close and open. This is the first rhythm of the new season. You have spent so much time believing that progress must be dramatic that you may overlook the power of small, faithful choices. But your life is often rebuilt through moments no one else sees. It is rebuilt when you choose sleep instead of checking one more time. It is rebuilt when you refuse to respond while anger is pulling you toward an old pattern. It is rebuilt when you leave a conversation because respect has disappeared instead of remaining simply to prove that you can endure. It is rebuilt when you accept a peaceful day without searching for evidence that something bad is about to happen. It is rebuilt when you tell the truth to someone safe instead of carrying everything alone. These decisions may seem ordinary, but each one places another piece of the new foundation beneath your feet. Do not become discouraged because part of you still looks backward. There may be nights when the old door seems louder than the road ahead. There may be moments when memory reaches for you with such intensity that you wonder whether you have made any progress at all. But a sound is not a command. A memory is not ownership. A feeling is not an instruction. You may remember and still continue walking. You may feel longing without obeying it. You may wonder what would happen if you went back one final time and still choose not to enter. You do not need to return to a burning room to confirm that fire is still hot. You already know enough to honor what has been shown to you. Let your feet relearn the feeling of solid ground. Let your eyes become accustomed to light that does not come from chaos. Let your hands learn that they were created not only to hold on, but also to release, receive, and build. You do not have to run into the future. The road will not disappear because you are walking slowly. I do not lead you with panic. I do not need fear to keep you moving. Fear may produce quick movement, but it often sends you in circles. Truth produces a steadier direction. Walk slowly if you need to, but keep walking. Some days the next step will be practical. Other days the next step may simply be maintaining a boundary you already established. There will be moments when nothing dramatic happens, and yet something important is changing because you are no longer allowing yesterday to decide what you do today. Eventually you will notice signs of freedom that once seemed impossible. A name may appear and no longer ruin your entire day. An old memory may return without pulling you backward. You may wake up and realize that checking whether someone remembered you is no longer the first thing on your mind. You may receive an invitation and answer from clarity rather than fear. You may spend an entire peaceful day without expecting disaster to arrive and punish you for enjoying it. These are not small victories. They are evidence that what once controlled you is losing its authority. One day you may look back at the old door and realize it no longer appears as powerful as it once did. Not because you hate what happened, and not because every memory has disappeared, but because you have discovered what it feels like to live in a place where you can stand upright. You will no longer have to spend every day commanding yourself not to return. You simply will not want to live where you must continually bend, disappear, or betray what is true in order to survive. That is the freedom being built within you. It is often quieter than the rescue you once imagined, but because it grows through truth, it can last. So look again at your hand. You do not have to carry the old key into tomorrow. Let your fingers open, let it fall. Hear that quiet sound, not as defeat, but as release. Then turn around. The road is still there. The light has not disappeared because you arrived later than you hoped. Your future does not stand before you demanding an explanation for every year you spent waiting. You are not required to understand its entire design before taking the next step. Keep the next step simple. Keep your heart honest. Keep the boundaries you have recognized. Walk forward not to prove anything to those who misunderstood you, not to make someone regret losing you, and not to build a new life while secretly watching the old one through every window. Walk because life is still calling you. Build because truth is a better foundation than fear. Receive what is good because your heart was not created only to endure. It was also created for peace, for joy, for meaningful connection, and for love that does not require you to disappear. The old key can remain where it fell. You do not need to pick it up again. Your next season begins not when every memory is gone, but when you finally understand that the past no longer needs to give you permission to move forward.